There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth installment of our Career Insights series for the spring semester, our fellowships panel. My name is Jihyun Ju, and I'm an advisor and program coordinator here at Barnard. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Donna Bryce Pacheco, who is our Associate Director of Fellowships. We'll be hearing from hopefully 5 Barnard alums today. We have 4 in the room, and we're waiting on just one more. Thank you so much to our panelists for making the time to join us. I'm going to drop the bios of our alums in the chat in just a second. There will be an audience Q&A toward the end of our program. So for our students in the room who are interested in asking our panelists a question, feel free to unmute yourself when the time comes. Okay, Donna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Yihyun. I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm really excited to see all of our panelists. I think we're very lucky that we have recent alums here that can talk from their perspective, not only having gone through the application process, but I think if not all of you, most of you are actually in the field. So I'm excited to hear updates on how things are going. And like Jihyun said, I'll be asking questions, but feel free to, note the questions in the chat if you hear anything that you want to follow up on, or wait until the end. So just to get us started, can each of the panelists introduce yourselves, tell us what fellowship did you do or you're doing, and where in the world are you? Natalie, you're next to me, so I'm just gonna pick you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie. I am a Fulbright researcher, so that's the fellowship I'm doing, and I'm currently in Panama City, Panama, and I graduated from Barnard in 2023.
Thank you. Cassandra?
Hey, I'm sort of similar to Natalie. I'm also a Fulbright researcher. I graduated in 2023, and then now I'm in Germany, in Kiel, which is a lovely city all the way in the tippy top of Germany.
Elle?
Hi, my name's Elle Ferguson. I graduated last year, and I'm in Spain right now teaching English in the northwest part of the country.
Alison, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm off camera. I'm actually on a train right now, and it's 1 a.m. in China, so I'm trying not to disturb people here. But I'm Alison. I graduated in 2021, and I'm a Schwarzman scholar right now, studying in Beijing, although I'm currently somewhere in the middle of the country. I'm actually not sure where.
Thank you for joining us, Alison, despite the time change. Layne?
Hi, everybody. My name's Layne. I also graduated last year, and I'm currently in Wisconsin. I'm at a coffee shop because I'm on my lunch break. But I'm currently in my home state of Wisconsin. I live in Madison now, and I work for Senator Baldwin.
And can you tell us the fellowship that you did?
Oh, yes, sorry. I did the Projects for Peace Fellowship, and I did my project over the summer, and I was based here in Wisconsin, focused on affordable birth control access.
Yeah. So this is a panel that's all over the world, and that's one of the amazing things of these fellowships is that they can take you pretty much anywhere to teach English, to do research, to pursue projects, and I'm excited for Layne to share more about that. But I want to get this conversation started by asking you, what made you interested in this process? How did the application process, how you approached it, and what are some of the key things that were helpful when you were at that stage, that it's where many of our students are right now, sort of thinking about it and considering whether or not they want to apply to something. Tell us a little bit about that. There's a really loud clock on this office that it just, when I muted myself, it started doing click, clock, click, clock. Elle, please go ahead.
The first thing that I did in the application process was I went to one of the webinars that Donna actually hosted around this time in March of I believe it was my junior year, March of my junior year. And I just listened to all the sources, all the resources that she gave. And when I heard about like all the benefits of doing Fulbright, it really like sold me on wanting to do it. So I wasn't really sure about it until I went to the webinar, and then I was sure that I wanted to apply. And then the next thing I did was I just looked all over the website for like the options, like what countries I wanted to do, what people's experiences were in those countries. Because I mean, if you're like, oh, Costa Rica sounds cool, I wonder what that's like. I mean, you can just like go onto YouTube and look up like Costa Rica Fulbright day in the life, and like someone's probably posted a video. So that was the first thing I did. And then I probably didn't get started on like the writing or the essays until the summer, but that's a totally different thing. Yeah, what the first things I did was like webinar and then Fulbright website. Super helpful.
I know that some of you started the process at different stages. I remember I met with you probably in May last year. And I remember Natalie, we met much farther ahead in the process, I believe somewhere like in July or August. And not to put you on the spot, but to highlight that while it's good to get started early, it is still possible to do a successful application, even if you get started a little later. But Natalie, can you share with us a little bit more about your specific project and why it made sense for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I, like Dana said, got started really, really late in the process, which is very not characteristic of me. So that was a little stressful, but it totally worked out. I also started at one of the career insight panels, like, so, you know, you're at step one. Great place to be. And I remember listening to Fulbright being presented, and I was like, that sounds really cool. I wish I had a research project that I could do, but I can't think of anything. Tried my best. I was like, that's, I guess, not going to be for me. But then that summer, I studied abroad in Panama and did an internship. And at like the last day of my internship, I was interning for a lesbian feminist advocacy organization, which in Panama is kind of really depressing and distressing work. And so at the end of my internship, I was like, this is really sad. What's the future for queer rights in Panama? And they were like, we really just need someone who can collect data for us and do research on like experiences with homophobia and transphobia in Panama. And that was kind of my moment. I was like, this could be my Fulbright research project. But the application was due in like 2.5 weeks. And I reached out to Dana, and she was so helpful in helping me put it all together. So for me, kind of a similar process to Elle, but I more so found a topic that I would be interested in researching. And that's kind of what started the process for me. So I think there are many ways to go about it. And as long as you're before the deadline, it is absolutely not too late to pull something together.
2 weeks before the campus deadline. Please don't come to me in October. August is still time. I know that both Layne and Cassandra had a very different approach to the fellowship. So I want to hear from you and sort of what took you there.
Yeah, I did the Projects for Peace, which was a summer-long project. And I think I first got really interested in it in like maybe like January of last year. It's like beginning of second semester of senior year, and I started researching it a little bit. And basically how it came about was I was doing my senior thesis work on like a history of abortion access, and like I was a history major, so it was like early, like pre-Civil War US. And then that kind of got me interested in like I guess like that sort of realm of stuff. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of continue doing that sort of stuff, but maybe more like birth control focused. And I'm from Wisconsin, and I knew that I wanted to do something at home. Unfortunately, like we've had a hard couple of years here in terms of various healthcare related access things. So I knew I wanted to come back here. And so I was really just looking for a way to do that. And I knew that wasn't probably going to be able to find like a job that would pay me to do that. And I also wanted it to be something more short term with like a set ending time. And so that's when I got interested in the fellowship, and I just started doing research. I met with Donna. She was like, you should consider this one. And I thought it sounded good. And so that's sort of ended up being the approach, is just like, I kind of stumbled upon it, and then it ended up being like a fantastic opportunity and a great experience for me to basically be able to do something I was really passionate about, and receive some funding in order to do that, to make that possible. So that was basically my experience.
Yeah, I at this point in my junior year, I didn't know really that people coming out of college could do a Fulbright. I don't know why, but I thought that only people who were like very far into their careers were allowed to do Fulbrights. So I have sort of a similar situation to Natalie. I didn't start my application until someone mentioned that I could do it at some point in July. And that is really challenging if you're going to do some sort of scientific research. So I'm doing scientific research, and the issue with that is you need a lab space that's going to like house you. You're going to need some sort of grant funding, or someone who has just a crazy amount of funding who can, take your measurements. So I started very late. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, if you're doing research, to start that late. But yeah, I cold emailed a bunch of people in Germany. I reached out to my research advisor at Columbia, who I was like doing my senior thesis research with. And that was really, really useful because while I did not know anyone in Germany at that point, he definitely did, because he had been in the field for a while. So I'd say really like talking to someone who who's in the field, who has been there for a while. They're definitely going to know people in the country more likely, or another country that they could direct you towards. So yeah, and I really just wanted to like spend a year after graduation doing some research. So I wanted to go to Germany. So yeah, put the application together. Yeah, and I'm lucky that I found a really great mentor. But yeah, mine kind of relied on having someone to go to. So it's a different style.
And Alison, I know that you can't speak much, but to your capacity, can you tell us a little bit more about your trajectory between undergrad and sort of how you ended up applying for Schwarzman a couple years after?
Totally. So yeah, after graduation in 2021, I ended up doing a policy fellowship in DC for a nonprofit for 2 years. So it was more of a full-time job with a traditional application process. But I always kind of had it in the back of my mind that I might still want to do a fellowship like a Fulbright or a Schwarzman. So I actually applied first for Fulbright to Mexico for the previous year, and I ended up being an alternate. So I'm kind of like familiar with the process for Fulbright, and I applied again at the same time that I applied to Schwarzman a year later. I think in terms of comparing the processes, Barnard, I felt, had just more experience with Fulbright, more resources for Fulbright. I went through the like practice interview, I think, for that. I didn't really connect much with Barnard when it came to the Schwarzman application process. It's not quite as involved. It's more of a self-contained application. And I really only decided to apply like a month before the deadline, I think. So basically just enough time to get recommendation letters. But it ended up being totally fine. So, for Schwarzman, you don't have to have, compared to something like a research project with Fulbright, you don't have to have a relationship with the university. You don't have to know anybody or like have your own plan for what you want to study. You just have to fill out their application and answer their questions through their interview. So it's a little bit more streamlined and self-contained.
Thank you for that. So as you can see represented in our panel, fellowships not only can take you anywhere, but you can approach them from different places, either from your own interest and tapping into your network, or, you know, if you have a project and it's the right time. So there's really not one formula. And that's something that I always say in my advising and in my information sessions. You do need to have a reason for why you want to do it, but it's not necessarily how your friends or how other people are in the process. So many of you are out there in the field. I want to hear a little bit about, you know, your time there and how the fellowship has met your expectations. You know, when you were writing that application last year and you were meeting with me and sort of in this dreaming stage and planning, how has it been different or better or worse? Share a little bit about the day to day. And I also want to sort of talk on that. Tell us about, you know, now that you're there, what are the things that you did at Barnard or that during your time here in New York City that have prepared you for the things that you've encountered now?
I can start. I definitely think, I'm just already saying that I think living in New York City definitely prepared me for living elsewhere in the world. So I grew up around New York, and I moved, I went to Barnard, and then I ended up here. I had a lot of co-people in my cohort who had a really challenging adjustment to coming to Germany, that I think definitely being in New York City, you will land a lot more on your feet elsewhere in the world than you think you're going to. I think that can be a little bit stressful when thinking about like moving somewhere random in the world, especially if you don't speak the language all that well, like which I didn't when I arrived in Germany. So that definitely is something good to have in mind. Also, yeah, but I think that it's been good to be here. I've been doing a lot of cultural exchange. I think that I was thinking that there would be a lot, you know, like I would only be doing research, but the Fulbright, at least in Germany, they also have these other things that you can do. So there's also this thing called Meet US, which I don't know if other countries also have this, but it's where we go into high schools in Germany as like the first American that Germans meet. Which is fun, but also like a child gave me a paper gun and was like, look, now you feel at home. And I was like, oh, wow. So it sometimes by doing this, I've come into...
That's like European humor.
It's European humor, but you come into just a lot more understanding of America, I think, with doing the Fulbright than I think I expected to. So in addition to like doing really great research and having a lot of fun in the lab and with my lab mates, there have also been other elements that I wasn't expecting Fulbright to provide me with that I'm really grateful that I now have. Yeah.
I would say it wasn't so much that like Fulbright didn't prepare me or that like I didn't or that like no one told me like, oh, like the adjustment can be a little difficult, but I didn't know much about Spain before I decided to live here. I just kind of went for it. And so so I was hoping that I'd be put in Madrid. That was the only city that I knew anything about. And I had a friend who had lived there for Fulbright the year before and said that it was amazing. So I was looking forward to that. And I ended up being put in a region of Spain that I know nothing about, that has quite a distinct cultural identity from the rest of the country. And it wasn't that I was disappointed that I wasn't going to Madrid, but I just didn't know what to expect. And maybe I felt a little disoriented at first. But I, like Cassandra, I've lived in New York City, which I thought prepared me well, and I also studied abroad. So I kind of knew that to expect like some sort of adjustment period when I was moving to an entirely new country. But I also do a lot of cultural exchange, which is nice because I get to talk to a lot of kids about their background while also still feeling like connected to my own. And if I were to like give advice to anyone going to a new country, is to just say like talk to people. and ask them how they're doing, and talk to other people in your cohort, because they're gonna know exactly what you're going through.
I think similarly, I would definitely say that so I studied abroad in Panama, like I said, and I think that was really helpful for me, not just like having the experience of living somewhere else with a distinct culture and a different language, but it was also really helpful to know specifically about the country I was moving to. So I think, like Elle said, I think it's probably helpful to like learn a little bit about the country that you're hoping to go to, but also know that there's going to be so much more you're going to learn once you get there. I have learned so much about like Panamanian culture and like the uniqueness of like Panamanian Spanish. So I thought I came with like an understanding of what it was going to be like to live here, and I ended up having a significantly broader experience than that. Like that cultural exchange part has been really wonderful, and the relationships I've built with Panamanians has been really lovely. I think also my research is entirely self-led. I am not in a lab, for better or for worse. And I have a supervisor, but she has a day job that is unrelated to research and unrelated to my research. So I thought I did benefit a lot from like the work that I've done at Barnard, that I'm sure all of you have done as well, like that self-driven work, and like needing to be able to like be self-motivated and really organized. But I think also it is a lot more difficult outside of the school setting, and I was not entirely expecting that. So you really have no deadlines, and you have no professorial support or TA support or like friends in the classroom who can help you. So I think, the work that Barnard has you do before you like leave is really valuable, but also knowing that like there's a really big learning curve, I think, no matter what you do when you leave school, but I think especially if you're choosing a fellowship that is really self-directed, and somewhere where you have never lived before. So I think I came with like a good background because of my experiences studying abroad and living like in New York, like the other panelists have said, and doing the work I've done at Barnard. But it was also really hard to be okay with there being a learning curve and not being able to really like hit the ground running and knowing what was happening once I got here.
I guess I can jump in next. Just for a bit of context, Schwarzman is essentially a graduate program, but it's 150 people in the cohort, and we are all like living and learning in one building together, exclusively with each other. So I'd say it's probably a pretty different experience from a smaller, more intimate fellowship where you're, in a group of 1 or 3 or 5, in that this feels to me actually much more like undergrad than what I was expecting. I think in terms of preparation, trying to learn about China was certainly helpful before I came, but not necessarily even essential in that I was really surprised by how little we're actually engaging with Beijing, not necessarily in a bad way. It sounds like terrible, but I would say Schwarzman does exist in a little bit of a bubble within Beijing. So that's a good and bad thing in that China, compared to anywhere else I've lived before, it's harder to be a foreigner here, I think, than anywhere else I've lived, in that the language barrier is much stronger. Fewer people speak English. There are no cognates with the language. It can be very isolating, I think, being a foreigner in China when you don't have the language. So having a cohort is really, really helpful. It's really, really, I think, essential to a lot of people's like ability to thrive in the program. And at the same time, things that I think prepared me the most for the program were less so about China specifically and more so about sort of leadership development, professional development, and academic preparation. So it is a program that's focused on leadership, which I was a bit dubious about coming in. Like what is actually leadership? What is a program that focuses on that? How do you teach that? Is it just going to be like a whole ton of nothing? And sometimes I think, teaching leadership is hard, but I think it's reflected a little bit in like what kind of culture there is inside the cohort. We do a lot of we do a lot of professional development, I think, compared to other graduate programs, and a little bit less like deep cultural immersion than other programs in China. So that's a bit of context on the program. I'm sure we'll get into more, but I actually am really loving it, despite, I guess, what it might sound like at this moment.
Layne, how was it for you going back home, quote unquote, to do this work?
Yeah, first of all, sorry if there's background noise, but I guess, yeah, I was gonna say the question didn't really apply to me as much since I was not only staying in the US, but I was going back somewhere where I'm from. So culturally did not have much of an issue. But I think it was rewarding. It was sort of what I wanted. And it also like set me up to like continue to live and work here. Being in college in New York is something that I'm really glad that I did. And it's something that made me like really, I feel like more worldly, for lack of a better term, but ultimately like I did want to move back to Wisconsin. And so I didn't have like a ton of connections here in the areas of work that I wanted to do, but it helped me build a lot of connections. In my like few months of research that I was doing, I reached out to like every single health department in the state. There's like almost 100 of them. So I made a lot of good connections that way. And it ended up just, yeah, it ended up like building a basis for me to not only work professionally here, but continue to do volunteer advocacy work on the side around promoting access to contraceptives and other like necessary healthcare things that have been unfortunately restricted here. So it was great. And I think it really just like opened a lot of doors for me. And like, it's the best part about it, like my experience with the fellowship was just that it was just like the freedom to do. I had like my framework for my project, but then within that I could kind of like work, and it did change a lot over the process. And I built connections and I did a lot of good research. So yeah, it was really good.
Thank you. And I appreciate your candidness about, how hard the adjustment is. Having done a Fulbright myself, I also experienced that feeling of like, oh, I've been here so many times. Like, what can be different from everything I've done? And it was radically different. Just getting to set up and, connecting with people. And it's useful for those of you who are considering fellowships to look at it and think, when I ask you about examples of your flexibility and your community engagement, it's because you are going to need it. And, that's one of the biggest assets and that you can bring into an opportunity. We're going to a different country, and the open-mindedness that, even in Layne's case, that was sort of like going back home. How do you approach it and make the most of it? That can help you for the next steps in your career. I know some of you have already hinted at this, but my last question for you is, what piece of advice would you give Barnard students or alum who are thinking applying for a fellowship but are feeling insecure or are not sure if this is for them? How do you think that this is helping you and what it's added, not only to your resume, but to your life, and how you would encourage someone else that's starting to think about going into the process?
I think I can start quickly. I think because for me, like I had kind of I didn't think I was going to be able to do a fellowship because I knew that I didn't want to do like, I want to say like a traditional fellowship or like what you think of when you think of a fellowship, because I didn't want to go abroad or anything like that. And so I would say like my best piece of advice would just be like, keep an open mind of like what a fellowship can look like. I didn't think that what I did was a fellowship until I found out that that's exactly what it is. So yeah, like I think thinking of it as not just like it's a great opportunity to travel and to do that sort of thing, but it's also like grant opportunities that can fuel like research or like it's something you're passionate about. And so, yeah, I think for me, I just didn't think of myself as like a fellowship candidate until I realized like that is what I was looking for. So yeah, I guess probably my best piece of advice from my experience.
I would say like if you're interested in going abroad, like being able to communicate in another language or do like cross-cultural exchange is applicable to a lot of different career areas. You don't need to say like, for instance, like I want it to help me in this particular job in this particular way. I think if you want to develop some soft skills like languages, cross-cultural exchange. Maybe you want to do like organization or like project leadership. Like those are all really good things to advocate for yourself. And you don't have to have a clear idea of what the future looks like. Just the skills and abilities that you want to have to be prepared for your future. If you're interested in going abroad, do it. It's so fun.
I think I can touch like specifically on the insecure part. I as I said, when I found out about the Fulbright, I was like, I don't have the chops for that. I don't have the idea for that. That's not for me. And then I applied, and before I found out that I got it, I literally accepted another job. That's how confident I was that I was not going to get this fellowship. And then I got it. So if you are thinking like, I don't have the chops for that, or like, I don't think I have the idea or the skills or anything like that, like the only thing you're going to be losing by trying is like the time you spent on your application. And if the outcome is that you get it, it is so worth it. I am having the most amazing time here. It's the best decision I ever made to apply and to break my contract with the other job and commit to doing this. Like I have grown so much as a person. I have become so much more passionate about something I was already really passionate about. So everybody's got their passion. Everybody's got something they're interested in. And I say, just do it. There's no reason not to try, and let someone else decide whether or not you are the right person for it. I think like just like putting a little bit of blind faith in yourself, like really is probably can be the best choice you've ever made, because it really was for me.
Yeah, I think Natalie is spot on. I also was thinking, I used to think like, oh, other people do Fulbrights and they're smart and go for them. They're so cool. But I mean, if you don't know unless you apply. So just like, and it's so early that like you can kind of forget about it by the time that you're a spring senior, and you'll have other things, but like it would be cool if it happens. And yeah, also echoing Natalie and Elle, like I think that the amount of personal development that's happened over the last year, I haven't even begun to like fully understand. Like I think that moving into a new country, putting yourself into like the crucible of trying to understand other people who really see things radically differently from yourself, and like just like really putting yourself out there, you grow so much as a person from the course of doing this. In addition, I mean, I still really love my research. I'm like so happy I get up every morning and do it, but also like I have to get up every morning and do it. And before starting the Fulbright, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to pursue grad school. Like I was kind of like on the fence. And so this year has been a really great way for me to test out, like when I'm put into a situation in which I really need to get up every single day and want to do this. I found that I feel prepared for grad school, and I think that I really want to do this. But I have other friends who are also doing Fulbrights, and they're realizing that like the full-time researcher life is not for them, but they found other really cool interests that they're looking for. So using it as like, even if you're unsure, if you're like, I don't really know if this is what I want to do, using it as kind of a way to test that out for yourself is super helpful. Yeah, the one thing that I also just want to make sure that I say is that, especially when it comes to Germany, look at like the finances that the fellowship provides. Some of these fellowships don't provide enough to actually live in the places where you are. So I'm really lucky because I'm all the way in this relatively small town in the north of Germany, and my monthly rent is 270 euros. But there are people who are in Berlin, for example, and they're paid the exact same amount, and their rent is about 80% of the salary. So also keep in mind that like if you're gonna go for a Fulbright or something like that, be prepared to like pick up a side job when you're here, or look at like a city that you might not otherwise want to live in. Like Berlin is like the hot and fun city, but Kiel is also really fun. And it's also affordable on the Fulbright salary. So yeah.
If any of you are interested in Spain ETAs, I found that the finances are, I mean, you're not going to live in luxury, but I think they're better than what they offer in Berlin. So if you guys ever need like specifics, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
I also
Germany just gives out too many, and so they cut the salary in half. So it is fine if you're in the rural areas, but it's not if you're in the cities.
I think also like if you choose to go somewhere in Central and South America, I think the finances are a little better because there's a little bit less of a demand of Fulbrighters in this area. But you can also apply for other grants to help like get you to where you feel like you need to be for paying for your project or paying for your like living expenses. That's been helpful for me.
And I'll say thank you for sharing about that. I know that money can be a little tricky, and it's sometimes Alison says that Schwarzman, they pay for everything. I know that this can be sort of a tricky topic to bring up even in our advising sessions. So having this network of alum that you can sort of reach out to and connect with is
I'm happy to give like exact numbers too. Like I have no problem with that. So if you guys ever want it,
all right.
email me.
I know that, and I can explain the admin side for this, and instead each country and region has a set stipend, so it doesn't matter if you are, you know, living in a remote village, you're still getting paid the same amount of money than if you are in Berlin or Panama City or whatever. And this has been a problem for forever, trust me. I really want to thank you all for your time. I know we're going to open the discussion now for questions from our students. Again, thank you for sharing candidly about your experiences. And to everyone who's in the audience, I think this panel really represents a broad range of experiences, from the work that they've done here in the US to Alison all the way in China, Germany, Panama, Spain. So these are all places that fellowships can take you. And beyond the funding and the research or the teaching that you're gonna do, just how much you all spoke about, you know, your growth and how this has been such an enriching experience. It's definitely a gain in my books, even if you didn't receive it, you know, like being in connection with you when speaking and seeing your development through all this time is amazing. I'm gonna put a link in the chat to our fellowships database where you can read more about all these fellowships that we mentioned, Projects for Peace, Fulbright, Schwarzman, and you can make an appointment with me on Handshake. And with that, I'll open it up for questions from you all. Feel free to write in the chat or mute yourself.
Hi. I was wondering, for people who are thinking of doing a fellowship but have a job right out of college, or who might want to take a gap and figure out what they'd be interested in researching before they do a fellowship, is that still a possibility? Is that still something that's available to you? And do you think people who aren't fresh out of college will be as competitive?
I know for the Fulbright, you can, I don't know if there's a limit, but I've had friends who've applied 1 year out of school. I've had friends who applied 3 years out of school. And from my understanding, I think you have as much of a shot when you do that as you if you're applying right out of school. I have one friend who's 1 year out, and she did not get it. And I have one friend who's 2 years out and she did get it. So I think you definitely can take the time that you want / need to pull an application together. You can also apply as many times as you want. So that is also an option if you're still kind of like figuring things out and don't know if it's going to be the right option for you.
I can say from the Schwarzman side, the fellowship's open to anyone up to age 29. If you're 29 when you enter the program. So it's spread pretty evenly across the ages. I do find that most people, or many people who are coming in, who are a little bit older, are coming in at a little bit of like a juncture in their career. Maybe they're trying to make a slight career pivot. Maybe they're considering more education, or they're considering just trying something different, and they want to learn about something new in a more general environment. So I think if you are coming straight out of school, you're not at a disadvantage. You just need to make sure that you can emphasize that you have professional experience, or you have leadership experience in a real way, or at least leadership potential. So that might, and really they just look for you being like really passionate and really engaged in something. People are experts or experienced in like a huge range of things. And Schwarzman scholars come from all over the world, not just the US. The US forms about 40% of our cohort. So there are lots of people, and I mean, the best thing about Schwarzman is the cohort, is the way that you get to meet all these other people from all over the world who are all between 21 and 29. So I'd say if you are coming straight out of a college, just like make sure it's really clear that you have sort of demonstrated your like interest and passion in going above and beyond in something that you care about, whatever. And then yeah, you can apply until you're 29, and I think it can be a really amazing experience. You know, at any point, you can kind of tailor it to your own needs.
Like Alison mentioned, some fellowships have a cutoff either for how long out you can be from graduation, or just age restrictions. And there's fellowships that really care about your project. So Fulbright, Natalie is a good example of, you know, someone who has a project and is really passionate and knows the field, and, you know, puts forward an application and is successful. Programs like Schwarzman care about who you are as a person, not as much as a specific project research that you're going to be doing. So it really depends on the fellowship, and it depends on what you're hoping to get out of it. That's why it's important, and this is something that I emphasize a ton, is come talk to me and talk to Barnard alum who have done it, because you are the ones that that's how you're going to get insight onto whether or not this is a good fit for you. What other questions we have? We got a question in the chat about the uncertainty of the application and whether or not did you have a backup plan, especially for those interested in grad school in the future. Natalie already spoke about her experience, and it's mentioned in the chat. What about the other ones? Did you have a backup? How did you handle having to wait months and months?
I was applying for jobs like crazy, like a normal senior spring. Like I was just applying to jobs. Like I would sit down every Friday and just send out applications. And I actually had an interview on the day that I got the Fulbright. That was a really great interview. But then obviously I got the Fulbright, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna move to Germany. So I would say that the uncertainty of the application, it does kind of get to you at a certain point, because like when I was sending in all these applications, I was like, and like, what percentage do I think I'm just gonna get the Fulbright, and then all of this work is gonna be for nothing, and I could have spent more time just hanging out in my senior spring. But it is kind of nice to have already done all that hard work many months ago, and then just have it pop up in the springtime. But I would say it definitely, like, the uncertainty definitely got to me a little bit. Just in terms of like, you don't really know if it's an option or not. And I wanted to go to grad school, so I applied this fall. You can normally defer your your like grad school admissions often if you're doing like most programs. So one could apply during your senior year as well for grad school and then push it off in the case that you got this. I have a friend who's doing that right now with Fulbright. If you apply for a GRFP, this is explicitly for the sciences, I'm just talking sciences here. If you apply for a GRFP, which is a graduate research fellowship, because it is another government scholarship, they get a little testy about you holding 2 government scholarships at the same time. However, I learned from someone else who then later got it, you can make it work. Like if you get the GRFP and you get a Fulbright, you can do both of them and you don't have to pick between like going to grad school and having the Fulbright. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers it. You can definitely apply to grad school and you can make it work even if you do end up doing the Fulbright.
Any other questions from students? This is a time to get insight from folks that are actually doing this.
I have a quick question for those that are doing research. I'm considering applying to fellowships that are in like sciences, but I don't have that much research experience, so I'm kind of curious what your experience is like in terms of or I guess like what your thoughts are in terms of having research experience both during the application process and now that you're actually doing the research, and like how valuable it is to have that.
I would say that it's a great way to test out if you want to do research for the rest of your life. Like, I mean, like it's a really, I would say definitely like, it's a really intense experience. I think Natalie spoke to this a lot, but like you're getting up every single day and there's no real deadlines and you're just doing this. So it's useful to have some experience. It also depends on your advisor, like especially in the sciences where if you need a lab space, you need to work more closely with someone. Then if you ask around and you have an advisor who's willing to like put in the time, right, and meet with you to help you learn techniques or to help you understand certain things, your advisor can really vary between different people who you match with in this process. So yeah, if you don't have a lot of research experience, I wouldn't say don't apply. I know people who are here with all different levels. You just have to like show them that you're eager and excited. But you also, I mean, just for yourself, I think do a little gut check for yourself, which is like, okay, do I want to do this for a whole year? Because there's gonna be the winter time and you're gonna have to also keep on doing this. And when things don't go right, which they never will, like you're gonna have to keep on getting back up and jumping back into it. So yeah, that's what I got.
I mean, and if you meet with me, you'll hear me say, try to seek experiences of research while you're at Barnard. Do the things, test it out now, get the toolkit and the experiences, or do something that summer after before you put forward an application. That's not only going to make you more competitive, but it's going to showcase that you have the interest in, learning about this and that you have the right skills. We got a question in the chat about recommendation letters. I know this is a touchy topic. So I don't know if any of the panelists can talk a little bit about how did they go about requesting letters, or what was your experience with that?
As I said earlier, I started the process a lot later than I would recommend, which did make the requesting last minute references is always awkward. But what I found really helpful was, so for the Fulbright, you write like many different like small essays as part of your application, and one of them for the research is like your statement of grant purpose, which is when you outline like, this is what I want to be doing and here's why, and like this is how I'm going to do it, and explaining your project. And I found it really helpful to have that written already when I reached out to my people that I was hoping would be references for me, so that I could include that in the email. And I think that was really helpful for me, because especially with professors who are really busy, especially with that time of year with references, I think it was really helpful for them to be able to like read my project and see that I was serious about it and that this was a project they would also like to be conducted. So I think that was like the most helpful, like tangible thing that I could recommend.
I had reached out to a former colleague of mine, and in college, like whenever I ended an internship or a job and I thought that I'd done particularly well with someone, I would ask like, hey, can I put you down as a recommendation for the future? Just so that like, I wouldn't have to like contact them out of the blue and be like, oh my God, hey, we haven't spoken in a year. Can I ask you for a favor? All of them would immediately say yes after I asked them. So that was really lucky for me. So when I called my colleague and I asked her to write this recommendation, she wasn't surprised. She knew that, I put her name down before for things. And I think the nice thing about at least for the application that I did for the Fulbright English teaching assistant, was that they didn't have to write like their whole form or letter themselves. It just like the Fulbright application, they send your recommenders an email, and then they ask like certain questions that they have to answer. So in a way that's nice, like they know exactly how they should be responding and what to put in there. And then just to echo what Natalie said, sending them some of your statements and what you're thinking is probably helpful for them, so that in your application it looks like you and your recommenders are on the same page.
Thank you so much. Gian, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you all so much to our panelists for joining us today and just providing such thoughtful insight. Thank you so much, Donna, for moderating our panel today. I'm sure many of the students in the room are going to be reaching out to you post this Career Insights event. For our panelists, you'll be hearing from me in a few minutes. I'll put everyone in an email so that contact information can be exchanged. And for our students in the room, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at our next Career Insights event. And everyone have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.